Hello, everyone. It's Martha Novak. I'm so glad to talk with you today. We are doing a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak, and it's a little bit of everything, this show. Sometimes we have marvelous callers. We hope to do it today. We are live, so our number is 347-850-1647 if you all are interested in calling in and talking with me about anything. What I have scheduled today is a talk on what mind you might be in. We are either in the highest self mind or we're in the lowest self mind, and I hope to clarify these things for you because the results you get are often dictated by what mind you're actually presenting your case through. So we're going to talk about that today. To get ourselves on the same page, though, I'd like to start off with a prayer, which I always do. It helps certainly center me, and I hope it does something for you. All right, here we go. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much. We open ourselves now to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We often think we know, dear God, and we open ourselves now to the blessing of not knowing, that we may have a completely open mind, that you may speak through us, to us and through us in this radio show, that we may find out the next steps of what we subjectively need to do. We thank you so much for all of this as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We thank you. And so it is. Amen. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in which mind are you is the question on the table. I got an idea for this radio show from a client of mine that had a bit of a dilemma on her hands. She is a medical professional, and she was seeking an employee with specific qualifications for her office. She was having such a hard time finding this person. First of all, she was using a recruiter, and I think that's a fine step. But second of all, the recruiter told her quite emphatically that she would have a hard time finding this well-qualified employee, that it might take a very long time, and it would certainly be a huge effort. And she didn't think that she would have much success in the short term. Meanwhile, my client's office is very stressed because everybody is doing, work that would have been done by this other person. So her question to me was, how do I manifest this employee when the market is against me? I realized that she really was confused, and I thought, well, if she's confused, other people may be confused too, because the answer was right in front of her, in the duality of the way God presents and the duality in the way she presents. I'm going to tell you both of these scenarios in just a sec. First of all, my client, new client that she is believing the recruiter instead of God and the way energy works. And God is a God of energy. This energy, if you are working with it correctly, and I urge you to listen to my shows on creating the life you want. They're also on Blog Talk Radio, and I would imagine by now on YouTube as well. I think you'll get quite a lot out of those shows because this is the working of energy. This doesn't have to do with personality. This has to do with energy. It doesn't have to do what the market is doing. It has to do with energy. This is an exception to every rule. Are you it? All right. So I have seen in my own life and certainly in the lives of other people that I work with, that energy works for you. The problem is if you don't harness the minds and do a lot of things that are about this show, and what I mean is finding your issues and transcending them, you're going to find that as you listen, that energy does work for you. It just doesn't give you what you want. It gives you what you're programming it to give you. So we want to be very open and understand some of the things that we are doing to sabotage ourselves that we don't even realize we're doing. If you're a regular listener to this show, you have heard what I'm about to say. I cannot emphasize it enough, though, so I say it almost every show, and I'm going to say it again. If you are a new listener to me, however, welcome, and let me explain this important point. God presents in two ways according to our understanding of God. Now, that's the important phrase here, right? According to our understanding of God. You're channeling all the time either this fear-based lesser mind or the love-based higher mind. Most people toggle back and forth. Some of us that begin the journey anew are just in the egoic child's mind, fear-based mind all the time. I'm going to have to do this to read because, oh, hello. Yes, Michelle. I'm so glad you're listening from Canada. That's wonderful. And my husband just said comments are on the right edge, and yes, they are, but I'm having to turn my head to see them, but that's perfectly fine. I don't think you all mind after all this time. Okay, so I'm going to repeat that. That's so important. God presents two ways: through the absence of itself or through the fullness of itself, according to what you believe, according to your understanding of God in that moment. Most of the time it's unconscious, by the way. And the whole thing about consciousness is bringing everything to be conscious. That's how mindful comes out of consciousness. You're in this moment. What are you creating with it? What are you doing with it? Okay. That said, that God presents two ways according to our understanding, through the fullness of itself or through the absence of itself. In absence of God thinking, we are in the egoic child's mind. It's the part of us that thinks and reacts like a child. As a matter of fact, it reacts instead of chooses. It is a choice, deliberate and conscious choice only occurs in the higher frequencies, in the higher mind. So the egoic child's mind is fear-based, self-indulgent, and conflicted internally, and often contradicts itself. We don't even realize this. And if we do realize that, we're puzzled by how we can contradict ourselves. We want one thing, we do another. If you're really beginning in your awareness journey, in your consciousness journey, you're going to be able to see these conflicts. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a good example, I think. So concerning this medical professional client, she wanted this very specialized employee. Okay. Well, I suggested a venue that would bring her 200 resumes. It's almost assured this venue would. She declined. She didn't want to read through all of them, she said. She didn't want to take the time. She didn't want to put in the effort and the work. Isn't that self-defeated thinking? She has absolutely not a resume on her desk right now. I myself would be thrilled to go through them if I were she and find a good candidate in that mix. So she says she wants to hire a great someone, but won't do the legwork to find that great someone. Now, the interesting thing is when I hear something like that, it points us in several other directions of issues that we need to go into now. But this is not the time to go into those issues for her. But I do want to say to you that we are sabotaging ourselves in a million ways like that. We're contradicting things. And when we're trying to create something, you can't have those contradictions if you're going to do it well. All right. There's a second mind, of course, and it's very important for us to talk about this. To keep things straight in my own head, I often see this mind with an uppercase M, as opposed to the egoic child's mind, absence of God thinking, that has the lowercase m, so uppercase, lowercase. That's just my own little predilection. This mind is the highest mind that I'm currently talking about. This is the love-based mind, the one that has the fullness of God mentality. It is the adult mind, and the mind with enough work that's capable of merging with the mind of God in conscious and enlightened states. Altruism comes out of this mind, incredible creativity, love. This is certainly what we're capable of in the unconditional love department. By the way, that phrase is thrown around so much. Nobody is feeling unconditional love, guys. Unless you are enlightened, you don't feel it. I'm sorry. Nobody feels it, and we're all struggling with that as human beings, to be that conscious and that enlightened and that loving, consequently. We have better careers, we attract more abundance, we can work the energy of God beautifully in this mind because we don't have all the clutter. We don't have the clutter in the highest self mind. I think of it almost like a garden. I think a good image is a garden. If you want incredible things to grow there, like awe for all of life, and gratitude and joy and forgiveness and creativity and all the things that are unconditional love and all the things that are available to us, then you need to root out what isn't available. I mean, what is growing there that is not of those intentions. Things like being enraged at your father or mad at your mother for not being your advocate. Whatever those things are, and everybody has them. I get real tickled with new clients that come in and say, "I don't know what my issues are. I guess I don't have any." And all I can do is smile because, listen, we all have them, but we all don't know what we don't know until we know. Okay. Moving along in this, this is the mind, this higher self mind that creates win-win solutions even if we don't agree. In other words, we agree to agree or disagree, right? We agree to agree or disagree. That's how you have a win-win solution even when you don't agree. It's concerned for itself, but also for others. It thinks globally in the big picture. It is the truly creative mind. We think we're being so creative in ego, and it's all ego-driven, all fear-based, because we think we're not enough there. So we cover it up and we have inflated egos. In the truly creative mind, we realize we're an endless source of creativity, and that creativity is coming from the God self we are, capable of receiving divine inspiration if we're open enough and when it's time. It's interesting, when I talk about these two minds, I often put something on the table, and that is this: that the egoic child's mind is all about itself. It's all about me if I'm in the ego child's mind. Or, by the way, it's all about you at the expense of me, which, by the way, is still all about me because I've just made myself the victim. And if you don't think that will make it all about you, then we're kind of off the beam there. You understand? So that's why I say the ego child's mind is enormously indulgent. It's enormously indulgent. Okay. The higher self mind isn't like that. The higher self mind is the global mind. It's saying we're both important. I'll give you an example of that. How many times have you heard speakers get up in front of an audience and they'll say, "Thank you so much for coming"? That's an ego thing to say. It defines you right away that you're an ego, not the higher self, because you're both giving your time. It becomes something like in the higher mind, aren't we all glad to be here together? This is marvelous. Because it's about everybody's time. You see? Good. I'm just giving you these tiny little examples as we go because, you know, I am delighted to talk about abstract things. That's no problem. My mind works in abstracts. But it doesn't serve us until it comes down to our level and we can use it tomorrow or this afternoon, as a matter of fact. We've got to be able to use these principles and start exercising them, you see? Okay. So here we've had two examples of the egoic child's mind, the higher mind. So why don't we just turn that mind, that higher mind on if it's so darn good? And I want to tell you, it's issues. Issues like not having a firm, deliberate, and real sense of self, not having your own authenticity, and hence not being your own authority, the authority in your life. You know, I'm often invited into businesses and as a coach, as a trainer, and I can't tell you through the years how many men and women have said to me that are in positions of authority, have said to me, "I can't be their friend, I'm their boss." Now, guys, that's a wannabe authority, because a real authority is a real authority. And if you are the real authority, you're not going to be challenged. And if you are, you know quite clearly what you're going to say, and you're the boss. I'm going to show you how that is. By the way, all those answers are in the egoic child's mind, are transcendent to the egoic child's mind and in the higher self. And we'll talk about some of that. In the egoic child's mind, we will hide our light under a bushel, right? And to use that old biblical phrase, we'll be afraid to change, to make changes. We've learned in our childhood. The ego child's mind thinks that change is bad. Actually, change is extremely good. All those things that you say you want have got to come to you through change. And guess what changes? You and your mind. We have issues all stemming from being in the child's mind and for whatever reason, and there are many of them. The child's mind we have a death grip on, and it has a death grip on us until we start loosening it and all the devices that we have put in place in our childhood to hold on to it. So why do we hold on when life could be so much better? Because of the propaganda from the egoic child's mind. You see, when you were little, you realize how vulnerable you were. It doesn't even have to be conscious. It can be subconscious. You are vulnerable. You see your mother and father when they raise their voice, not in the light of why they're raising their voice, those kinds of awarenesses and that come out of your developed mind don't even start happening until you're in your 20s and beyond. Your ability to see something other than appearances. Because the ego child's mind bases everything on appearances. All right? So your father raises his voice, and he's a force, and you're not a force. And he could kill you, even if he's a kind man and just having an explosive rage. The child's mind formulates its world in a certain way. It is individual. It's about what the child needs to develop to survive. And I happen to believe um, evolve past to grow and to be one's potential. We all start out as ego, Giles, mind, and if we're lucky, we go to something else. The ego child's mind tells us that the only reason we're alive is that we live within certain limitations. You have several experiences in your life to tell you that's true. We remember certain things from our past that confirm our bias. You see? Okay. But as I said earlier, appearances are not the truth. I can give you an example from my own childhood. When I was a child, and I was an only child, my parents wanted to go out on a much needed date. Now, I was probably 5 years old when this happened. And to go on their date, they had to leave me at my grandmother's house. Now, I love my grandmother. She was a wonderful and very strong woman. But her house and how we did things there, which was the same every time, was just boring. For a little kid, it was boring. I mean, we'd play cards, the same card game over and over again. I think it was gin rummy, I think. Okay. And we would have spaghetti if we were lucky. And we would watch, don't ask me why, I'm still puzzled by this one, live Atlanta wrestling. My grandmother just loved that. I don't know whether she enjoyed watching men's naked bodies or what, but she liked that. And I have often thought about it and went, what's the psychology behind that? You know? So I can't even go there. I don't know. Well, anyway, that was the end of the story in terms of the excitement around there. I was a long way from finding out and being curious about how people work and why they do what they do, and even family history, which I'm, of course, fascinated with these days. So, by the way, going back to my story, in protest, when my father and mother were dropping me off, I started running through the house. Now, grandmother had a great loop in her house, right? You started in the living room, and then you could run down the hall and into the kitchen and into the dining room, back to the living room again, nice long one, and then you could start the loop again. And I started running. Now, I don't remember what revolution I was on of this loop, but at one point I knocked into a chest, and this beautiful antique vase fell down and broke. You know, I think it is such justification from the universe. It's hilarious to me that uh, I have the sister vase to that now in my house. It's like there to remind me not just to not run through the house, but some of these other principles that I'm telling you about. Although I haven't run in the house lately, that's good. So my mother called me down on one of these revolutions. She said, don't do this. You're going to have an accident. You're going to break something. You're going to get hurt. Something's going to happen. I didn't listen. Da, 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 da. And sure enough, there it was. So at this point, broken vase on the floor, my mother raised her voice, told me to go to the back bedroom where I would be punished. Now, the interesting thing is I don't remember the punishment. It wasn't that it was so gosh awful. I don't even remember whether I had it. The fact is, there were more important things for me to get out of the story that I want to pass on to you. My egoic child's mind learned in that moment, and other moments like it, by the way, that having too much energy wasn't good. That expressing myself and my feelings and my energy wasn't good, and that I would get in trouble and possibly be punished for that. I would be humiliated and embarrassed. So many years later, for many years after that experience, I held my energy down, suppressed it, dampened it, and back. You don't see that now, do you? Because you train yourself past these things if you're lucky. Some people don't. I certainly did, and I'm recommending that for you. So I also back then learned not to let my true feelings show. That, that was not a good thing. All right. That no one appreciated it and that somebody was going to come down on me for it. Now, those are all the lessons that I formulated in my little child's brain from that incident. And it's not just one incident, it's that incident and others like it, right? But here's what my dear mother, and I had a very good mother, meant to say to me. By the way, very few mothers or fathers are saying this because it takes too much time. So, but here it goes. She probably meant to say, had she been aware, thank you so much for your wonderful high energy and for expressing yourself. We get your opinion that you don't want to be left here. Thank you for making your feelings known. We really do respect that. But you didn't do this responsibly. And when I told you that you were not doing it responsibly and that something could happen, you didn't listen to me. And I'm the adult and I'm supposed to keep you safe and I'm supposed to teach you. And so that's really why you're getting punished, not because of your wonderful high energy. Now, no one's parents speak to their children this way. Who has the time to do that, much less the awareness to do that? Some of them do. I mean, if they work with me, I'm always suggesting things like that they straighten out their child's thinking when they see the direction it's going in. But the problem comes that we as parents can't tell what connections are being made all the time in our child's heads. And we can only address what we see. Now, that's the way it should be. You see, we all have our journeys from the ego child's mind to the highest self. If we addressed everything, there would be no journey for the child, hence no growth. So, the problem comes with all of us being in the child's mind and eschewing our growth and evolvement and our emotional maturity and our ability to transcend our issues in our old story to create what we want now. Now, you see? What you're creating right now in this moment has nothing to do with your old story. It has nothing to do with your mom and dad and your treatment or ill treatment. It doesn't have anything to do with it. It's about what you're going to do right now. Thank you, sweethearts. I'm so appreciate those hearts that you send. Hi, Pat. I'm so glad you're here. I'm coming through sideways. Oh my. I'm coming through sideways. This is not good. Let's see if we could do something else. Pat, you'll have to let me know if that worked because I rotated. We'll see. Okay. All right. Thank you for telling me. You guys do let me know when something is wrong because I have no way of knowing. All right. Okay. So, what mind we're in is vitally important to our being able to get what we want, to manipulate the energy and get what we want now. We need to be incredibly sensitive. We need to listen to the ascended God we are, which, by the way, always tells you what to do, keeps you on the cutting edge of change and growth, and, by the way, opportunity. I think that everyone in this economy who is struggling in some way, and so many things are changeable in this economy these days. As you know, businesses are changing all the time. The world is changing fast all the time. You can expect the unexpected. And all of us that are experiencing that have been told if this highest self mind is on, even partially on, if we're listening to it in any way and getting out of our way, we're really told when change is about to occur. And in that, sometimes a great deal of anxiety comes up. I want to talk about anxiety because anxiety plays a big role in the mind, in the hi, Hope. Oh, I'm so glad you're listening today. Thank you for doing so. I want to talk about anxiety to you all because anxiety is one of the things that is only present in the egoic child's mind. It's not present in the highest self mind. As a matter of fact, when you cross that threshold into the highest self, it becomes excitement and it becomes motivation and hope, and there's hope, the word, sometimes and I mean this word in the best way, the ability to be opportunistic with your opportunities. I am so sorry about that dog barking. I hope he's not bothering you all as much as he's bothering me. I have him trapped in the basement, and that's 3 floors down, and he is just incensed about being kept down there. You know, an open floor plan in the house is absolutely marvelous, except when you're doing a radio show. It's not so marvelous then. And you have animals that want to be on the air, I think, with you. Okay, so let's talk about anxiety for a minute. Anxiety is one of the big blocks, and we're all using it in incredible ways. You know, I think anxiety is actually sometimes a good thing because it can tell us that change is imminent. Okay, that's great. And then we can go, okay, you're just telling me that change is not enema, imminent, and I'm going to now reduce my anxiety because I'm going to go willingly into this change and let's see what's there for me and what I can do with it. Because there's a great opportunity in chaos, but we've got to align our minds to realize that past the anxiety that chaos brings, which is, by the way, from our childhoods, that anxiety about that. Now, anxiety is an emotion characterized by an unpleasant state of inner turmoil. It can be acute, like you have something to do that you're worried about doing, like giving a speech. That's an acute anxiety, or chronic. And chronic, by that I mean you've had it all your life. You don't even know where it comes from. You're just anxious all the time. It's like background music under everything. Okay. Anxiety is a natural emotion. Everybody experiences it from time to time, of course. It's different from fear, though, because fear is a response to a real or perceived immediate threat. Anxiety involves the expectation of future threat. Anxiety is a feeling of uneasiness and worry, usually, by the way, and these are the big words. Oh, thank you, Pat. He says it's working better now. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. Oh, yes, this is Cinco de Mayo, and happy Cinco de Mayo to all of you. Okay. So anxiety involves the anticipation and the expectation of a future threat. It's a feeling of uneasiness and worry, and this is what I was going to say that's important. It is usually generalized and unfocused as an overreaction to a situation that is only seen as menacing to the individual experiencing the anxiety. For example, let's say the person sitting next to you is terrified to speak up in the classroom. They've learned from their childhood that speaking up is a terrible thing. They'll be humiliated no matter what they say. And they're experiencing a lot of anxiety. You're not. You're just sitting there and listening listening to what's being said and taking in the learning. So this is a subjective experience about what everybody is anxious about. One of the big things I want you to know about anxiety is it only exists in one mind. I said this before, it bears repeating. It's the ego child's mind it exists in. It's going to change to something else a lot healthier when you cross that threshold between minds, when you go from the egoic child's mind and you open the energy into the highest self mind. Here it becomes some wonderful things that you're going to use for your good. Yesterday, I was teaching an advanced class. By the way, if you're interested in studying with me, please let us know. You can write me through the website. And we do these classes all over the United States. I teach them on Skype. And it's you can learn out more if you'll go to my website, which is marthanovak.com, Novak, by the way. I don't run a beginning class every quarter. I run it once in a while just because of my schedule, but we would be delighted to apprise you of the next time. So just let us know if you want that. So yesterday, I was teaching my advanced class, and the class this quarter is on the study of anxiety. They knew that, but I started out with really a different exercise. I'd like to pass it on to you now because I think it has every bearing to what we're talking about with the minds and with your transcending anxiety ultimately. Now here's the exercise. You'll need a pen and paper for this. I'm not going to take you through it right now. So if you're interested in doing this exercise, why don't you write the exercise down as I say it? But I can't give you the 5 minutes of time that it will take for you to think through what I'm asking you to do on the air because, you got to keep talking on radio, right? No dead space. All right. So what I want you to do is just get a pen and paper and write down what I'm asking you to consider. And then do it after the show. Here's the exercise. I want you to write a plan of action for several hypothetical situations. Again, you're writing a plan of action, practical action. I don't want you to keep the exercise general. I want it in detail. What you write must be in detail. For example, if you decide that you need more friends, just by way of example, how are you going to do it? Don't leave it, I'll make more friends. What are you going to do? Approach people at a party? Are you going to see someone interesting that waits on your table and invite them to coffee afterwards so you all can talk and find out who you are? How are you going to do that? All right? That's what I want you to write. When I say what you plan, I want to know how you're going to implement that plan. Okay? All right. That said, here are the hypothetical situations that I want you to write down. You'll recognize them as a lot of stressors in society. All right, you ready? Your partner dies. What's your plan of action? Now, you may not have a partner right now. It doesn't matter. You still need a plan of action. Your partner dies. What is your plan of action? Next one. A friend drops you. What's your plan of action? Next. Another friend misunderstands your intentions completely and won't even talk to you about this. They've closed their mind to you, and they won't see you any other way but the way they're inclined to. What's your plan of action? The next one. Someone you love very much is disappointed in something you do. What's your plan of action? Next one. You're in a car accident. What's your plan of action? Next one. You're getting a divorce. You've agreed to that. What's your plan of action? Next one. You're moving from one house to the other. What's your plan of action? Next one. You get fired. What's your plan of action? Next one. Someone cuts you off in traffic, dangerously so. But you're all right. What's your plan of action? Next one. You have a fight with your partner. What's your plan of action? You are alone. All your friends have moved away. What's your plan of action? Last question. You get in the middle of each of these scenarios and find out there's more to learn, more to be done, more people to solicit information from in order to move forward. What's your plan of action? Now, I tried to go slowly with that list, but everybody says, oh, I'm always, a racehorse through things. So if I was for you, you keep in mind that all these shows are archived on Blog Talk Radio and on Facebook Live, and they usually make their way to YouTube after that. So you can find the show again on all of those things if you'd like to re-listen. All right. So I asked my class, and I'm not going to have a chance to do this with you because you haven't done the exercise yet, but I asked my class yesterday, once they had done the exercise, what they felt. Every single one of them felt empowered, and another person said they were surprised that they knew exactly what to do in each scenario. They had never given that a thought. And if they and somebody else said, and if I don't know exactly what to do, I certainly know who to call to get the information from. So in essence, you know what to do. So the anxiety they felt sometimes didn't come from not knowing what to do, like they supposed, but from not wanting to do it. And this reveals the child's mind. We all have to do hard things in life, sometimes even unpopular things. To do these things effectively, one must have a strong sense of self, a living authenticity and authority within our own beings. And this comes from the highest self. Otherwise, what's the lower form of that? Domination, control, and being extremely unhappy when other people don't do what we say. That's the ego child's mind for you. The highest self is where these marvelous things come from, the sense of self, your living authority and authenticity. The words you say in these situations, the thoughts you think, the actions you take, either are going to come out of the highest self, that mind, or the ego child's mind. And you will have a less than optimal result when it comes from the ego child's mind. I think of marvelous story. I have told the story before, but it's one of my favorites, and I think it illustrates this point extremely well. I have a dear couple that have worked with me for many years, and they're beautifully conscious now and marvelous people together and separately. They're married and have a good, strong marriage now, having worked through some hard times. I remember this story for many years ago that was one of the first problems that they brought to me. So, setting up the story, the husband is in the kitchen counting out his vitamins for the day. His wife is in another room, has no idea what's going on in the kitchen, and his wife was in a hurry and with her own agenda, and so she shouted to him that she wanted him to go down in the basement and bring something upstairs that was too heavy for her. And he got furious. He got furious because this back then was rather a chronic situation. She would demand and she would want it right away, according to his mind. You know, if you asked her, she probably would have said, no, I didn't mean right away, but she didn't say that. And in his mind, because he had had a very demanding mother and first wife, he saw everything as this great demand, right? Okay. So he got really mad with her. So I worked with both of them separately, right? And we talked about this same instance, and I heard from both of them. And so I suggested to the wife that we always talk from a premise, a higher self premise, which is we know that the other person is busy. Everybody is on their own agenda, right? So instead of just demanding something, even if you didn't mean it as a demand, it came out that way. Why don't you say, darling, what are you doing? Are you doing something really important right now? Well, yes, I'm counting out my vitamins. Well, darling, sometime today, it's not in any rush, but sometime today, would you mind getting so and so from the basement because it's too heavy for me? Would you mind doing that for me? And he'd, of course, said, no, I don't mind at all. So when I presented this to her, she got furious at me. She said, do you mean, still a lot of ego, okay? It's not there anymore, but it was then. Do you mean that I've got to think about every single thing I say to my own husband in my own house every time I say it? And I said, no, you've got that marriage. But if you want a better one, yeah. Now, I hope you can hear the differences between minds, because one is full of respect and honoring the other person's agenda and what they've got to do and what they think is important, and still getting what you want. That's the highest self scenario, and that's what we're all capable of. Okay? Okay. When you do your what's in your plan list, what is your plan list? There's a second part to the exercise. Here it is. Go back and cross out anything that is motivated from the child's mind's place of fear. Anything that's fear-based. Okay? Cross it out. You don't need it. Now try to rethink your plan from the highest self perspective. And then you will have a genuinely fine strategy to handle all of life's most difficult moments. And guys, if you can't think of what they are, because oftentimes we can't, if we're in the ego child's mind, there's nothing wrong with you. It just means that you're full of the old agenda, full of the old way of doing things. You might want to talk to somebody, a good coach, a good trainer. You can get on our website. We've got me and several marvelous other instructors here that would help you with this, so that you can find your plans. And the interesting thing was, when we did this exercise, everybody looked at this exercise and went, gosh, I know what to do. So I don't have to be anxious about what to do. So what is this anxiety? It's number one, wanting to avoid the hard stuff. And number two, just not transcendent enough of the ego to go on into the higher self and be that almost all the time. I say almost all the time because, at our best, we're human. We toggle back and forth sometimes. We just don't want to toggle back and forth as much as we're doing. Okay. If your list is good and powerful, it's time for you to realize that really you can cope with anything. But wanting to do it is a different story. Why? Why? Well, I use the word because we're all into avoidance and we're pretty good at it. We haven't realized we do know how to handle everything. Because, you see, the ego child's mind is still active and tells us we don't. And it doesn't know that if we don't know, we can learn to know. Well, this is the path of all adults. However, if you have never challenged yourself in these arenas, you don't know that you know. That was the point of the exercise. And when you don't know that you avoid, which is the safest route for the child you were and the child's mind that you could be employing still to this day that we're trying to challenge for you. I want to say to you that avoidance doesn't get you anywhere. And all sorts of opportunities are lost. They are really lost in avoidance. We fantasize. By the way, fantasy is its own reward, right? So nothing good ever comes out of fantasy. It just makes us feel good in the moment when we're fantasizing, but you can't create anything from that. That's not the point of fantasy. Fantasy is its own reward. You go there so you don't have to do anything. You understand? Same thing with yearning. Don't be fooled by these things. We fantasize, we isolate and withdraw. We feel alone, we work against ourselves in all sorts of ways from that egoic child's mind. I don't think that's why you're listening to the show. I don't think this is the life you want when you do that. Anxiety, which is always generated from the egoic child's mind, locks us up. We do the same things over and over again because of the anxiety. Now, here's the interesting thing. We dare not raise our energy, express ourselves, come face to face with how we really feel. We might have to move and change and grow and make decisions there, right? And that's really scary because we think, oh, we can't. But you can. We dare not be authentic and the real authority in our lives. Better to remain the child, we say, and look around for someone to take care of us and protect us. And when they don't, or when they don't do it the way we think they should, we're disappointed in them because we're disappointed in us, but we dare not face that fact. So we go on a relentless hunt for somebody better, but we get the same old person in different disguises because the thing that needs to change is not them, but us. So we attract a different them. That's how it works. This is just one example of what we do. The fact is something needs to change, and it's us. If we do the same things over and over again, this alone causes anxiety. There's a futility to this. We are doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. We say we want that. Can't you see the inner conflict here? We say we want that, something else beyond, and yet we're doing the same thing over and over and over again. Wow! There's futility and hopelessness in that. Every time we do something from the egoic child's mind, we prove to ourselves that we must do it again. When you do change and try to change, and this is what happens in consciousness studies, you become aware. I could do something else, because in the ego child's mind, you don't have very many options except to do as you did when you were a child. It's only when your consciousness opens that you see other solutions, more powerful, great solutions. And by the way, if you all decide today to go into all your consciousness studies and you're ready to pick up the phone and call, don't you think you're not going to have anxiety doing that? See, we have anxiety not moving, and we have anxiety moving because the ego child's mind's going to send up all sorts of propaganda saying, don't move, you're going to die. And you've got to just damn well prove that's not true to yourself. There's a better life out there beyond our issues. But the ego child's mind knows nothing of that life. It only knows itself. The higher self knows all about the ego child's mind. I always say, here's a great image. I would use this in my beginning classes. I'll say, draw a huge circle. And for our purposes, this is your potential. And for our purposes, we must acknowledge there really isn't any rim to it. How great can you be? Now, take a magic marker and put a tiny little black dot in it. That's the ego child's mind. And yet we let it run the show. You give it all your energy, and you don't know all the ways you're giving it all the energy. I'm bringing up a few of them here, but let me tell you, you're positively diabolical, because we all are as human beings. And we've got to find out all these big, intermediate, and minute ways that we're sabotaging ourselves and stopping ourselves. You can't give me the line, I sabotage myself, and expect me to get rid of it without telling me the 50 things you're doing to sabotage yourself. And you couldn't come up with those right now, because it's the opening of the mind that goes, oh, look at what I just did. Oh, look at what I just did. Oh, look at what I just said to myself. You see? Oh, there's a great richness here. But the richness is what you don't yet know about yourself, that you're in the process of discovering. So, you have a nice little system to stay exactly where you are the rest of your life. My question to you is, how do you like it? Because if your answer is, I can improve, or I don't like it, I think consciousness studies are your answer. I think opening your mind past all the egoic child's mind is on the table for you. I was called to this work. I think some of us are. I think some of us aren't. I know that it gives people a better life. I know they're happier. I know they're more abundant, more creative. The beneficence of God is right there for us to pick up when we go on this. I remember very distinctly being called in my time to this, and called every step along the way. And some people are and some people aren't. This work makes you very compassionate for everybody else in the world. Oh, you go through a phase where you're mad at everybody that is not conscious, because you yourself are not. And it's easier to be mad at them out there and call yourself conscious than it is for you to recognize that you still have a way to go. Guys, this is just human nature. I'm not criticizing you. This is the way I was too. It's the way we're all made and wired until we're not. The good thing is our wiring is all energy, and energy can be moved and changed, and our life will reflect it. So We are in the process of going in our journey from the egoic child's mind to the higher self. And man, if you don't think there are rewards in there, we have more talking to do. Now, if you want something more, you're going to have to take a chance in growing past your anxiety of knowing more about your two minds. You're going to have to train yourself to see them clearly and resolve and transcend the issues that keep you stuck in the child's mind. Child's mind is all about the past. The ego child's mind is all about the past, or it's about projecting into the future so you can make sure in the future nothing happens to you like happened to you in the past that was so hurtful. But the higher self is all about now, this creative moment of now. And that influences your future every time, and in a good way. Because if this moment is conscious and deliberate and full of love for yourself and others, and full of good intentions, you'll do well. This woman, that I started out talking about, the medical professional that I was telling you about, she asked me a really important question, and that is, how can I do this when I don't entirely believe what you're saying? I want to believe, but I'm not there yet. And that's a very good question, and I want to pass this on to you. I said and pointed out to her, as I'm pointing out to you, that we all have the talent, which is a suspension of disbelief. You have a talent for that. It's a talent like any other talent. When you go to the movies and when you watch television, you're not sitting there the whole time saying, that can't happen, that can't happen, that can't happen, that's impossible, that defies the laws of physics, that can't happen, that can't happen. We wouldn't enjoy anything, you see. That's your suspension of disbelief. Why don't you use it in your own life? Why didn't you say, when you're praying and trying to create something, dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you right now and to create something. I don't entirely have my mind where I need in my highest self, but I know this works. I declare it does. So I'm going to ask you to suspend my disbelief in you and in this work. And I'm going to say, I can create this employee, this job, this car, this house, this partner, I can create right now in purity, in the highest self purity, that clean, clear energy. Right now, I can do it. And then if I have to, I'll go back to picking up my disbelief in things. But right now, it's as pure as it can be. Why not that? That's how to do it. We don't have to wait until we're fully conscious. Good Lord, we're all on a path. We're all getting there, right? In our time and how we want to do it. If you're listening to the show, that's what you're doing. So until then, there's no reason for you to not have what you want. It's just that you're going to do it better when all of that is real and sincere in you. When you know how God works because you've seen it over and over again. And when you have let go of the ego child's mind. You see, dears, you'll never let go of the ego. The ego is a very essential part of you. It's the ego child's mind that's the problem. It's the part of you that thinks like a child. And that develops right along, about 18 months old, with the ego. It's the thing that adds puffery, adds layers of issues. We just don't need that mind anymore. Now, will you ever get rid of it? Absolutely not. Will you resolve some of its issues? And will you deactivate that mind in the nervous system so you can come from the highest self most of the time? Absolutely. That can be done. Gradually and inevitably, you will change, grow, evolve, and become something absolutely glorious in this energy. Oh, hello, Stephanie. I'm so glad you're with us. Anxiety, though, must be addressed. Our simply living, fear of living, thriving, having pleasure, being visible, being out of control, or the anxiety that comes from your worrying about what other people will think of you, really these things have to be addressed. What you think of yourself is much more important. And when you think these things about you, you're abandoning yourself over and over and over again, abandoning yourself when you're thinking these lesser thoughts. Chronic anxiety from the egoic child's mind does create depression and feelings of futility. Oh, Michelle, that's such a great question. Michelle has just written in. I'd like to address that. I think this is marvelous. Why do people always say, I am going to leave it for God? Is this just an excuse to not deal with it? Michelle, you are brilliant, because that one question shows that the motivation for that question, that you can only answer for you, by the way, not for other people. Otherwise, we're making an assumption, right? Shows what mind we're in, because either mind can create that line, I'll leave it for God, when they don't know what the hell to do, right? I'll leave it for God, and we live in this airy-fairy land if we're coming from the egoic child's mind. God seems like a Santa Claus or a daddy that gives us everything, or should in our fantasy, right? Or it's Cupid or the Easter Bunny. That's not a real, living, authentic God for you that is in you, by the way. The only God you can use is the one you are. And unfortunately, it presents two ways. That's what confuses us, like the low energies or the ascended energies. Of course, it's fortunate in the end because that's our journey. So the fact is, we must trust God on that level. I know if I don't know something, God's going to bring me the answers. If I don't have an idea for my next book, God's going to bring the answer to me. I don't have to stress about it. I just need to be aware and keep my eyes and mirrors and being open to information when it's time. I do believe that. But that's not airy-fairy. I've seen that energy work in my life. Really creative people do. I have written music in my time. The piece of music that you hear as the introduction to the show is an old piece of music that I wrote called All There Is. And I'd get stuck either with lyrics or with the tune of something. And I know just to get up and walk away and to say, I'll have this answer when I come back. And sure enough, by the time I sit down at the keyboard again, I have the answer. My girlfriend and I, who's also a writer, and I were talking the other day that we always gain weight when we're writing books because we get up and go to the refrigerator. We say, the answer will be there when we come back. But right now, I don't have a clue about what it is. Why should that worry us? God will give us the answer when it's time. We might have to leave for 2 days or do something else and get our mind off all things, other things. And then all of a sudden it pops in. That's a creative experience, ladies and gentlemen. And living itself is a creative experience. So back to your question, Michelle. This thing, I'm going to leave it to God, can be motivated from the egoic child's mind or the highest self. It isn't entirely real. You see, there's an implication of I'm dependent and I'm poor and lonely and I can't possibly know the answer to this, so I can't even think about it. I'm not going to discover. I'm going to be, God will handle it. And the full realization is the highest self, that God is all you are. let's open, let's get ready for the information, and let's make ourselves that kind of vessel, that kind of channel for love, for information, and for truth to come through. I hope this answers your question. The reason I love your question so much is that is the perfect example right there of what this whole show has been about. Both minds are active in all of us. Which one are you using to answer that question? Which one are you using to answer any question? Which mind are you coming from? If you find yourself in a discussion with your partner and it is not going well, I want all of you all to say, which mind am I in? Oh, I'm addressing that and I'm angry. Why? I got to get that out. I've got to come from the highest self so we can find a solution in this. Solutions are not in the egoic child's mind. Think of it this way. See that fist? I'm holding up my fist, goes if you're all listening on the radio. And here's another fist. And we're pressing against each other when we argue. Somebody's got to be up here. So there's nothing to press against. And then everybody goes to the highest self and finds the solutions. That's where the solutions lie. It's not in who does what to whom. It's what are we going to do when this comes up again? Because here's my position, here's your position. How do we both get what we want? What are we going to do instead? Now that's a higher self thing. You understand? So Michelle, I'm very proud of you. Thank you so much for that. The answer is always in there are two minds. Which mind are you coming from? That's the answer, always. You see, anything can come from either mind, even God. Good. So, anxiety has to be addressed. We must become the adults we are. We must vote for our politicians in clarity, not out of our mom and dad issues. We can't treat our boss and our friends and our partners like we did our parents and like they did us, by the way, which is in us now as the way to respond. We must be real. We must be who we are and live in the moment authentically and in reality. We have to be full of authority as expressed in our own lives. And we must learn on the minutest level to be kind to ourselves and others. It's in the advanced mind that we say, oh, thank you, Michelle. She said she understood that feedback. I hope all of the listening audience did too. Thank you, Michelle, very much for that. It's so nice to hear from all of you. It really is. It just means the world to me. When you're sitting here and you're doing these radio shows, sometimes you can go, is anybody listening at all? And then you're hoping. So I just love hearing from you. It just means the world. And by the way, you all are just giving me the best questions. You always come in with great comments, great questions. And that means a lot to me. It really does. So we can't come from the past and be real. I think of it this way. You've got a pole that's your mom and a pole that's your dad. And in the egoic child's mind, we're pinging from one pole to the other. And here's what I mean by that. If we liked our mother and didn't like our dads, for example, we gravitate toward everyone who's like our mother, and we avoid and ping against and argue with everybody who's like our dad. Well, where's the real you in that? And that's just by way of example, of course. Where's the real you? The real you isn't someone that pings back and forth. The real you is somewhere in the middle that stands up and becomes who you are as your own autonomous and independent and God-centered person. And hopefully that's the ascended God you are, not the lowercase mind. And that's what consciousness is waking up to that person you are beyond what you think created you. Because really, you belong to the family of God now. And all of us that are in this kind of recognize each other, you know? There's an energy, an unspoken energy between us. We go, ah, we don't have to understand it. It just is. Okay. I do want to put another truth on the table, which is a truth I've said before. We don't know what we don't know. But consciousness and consciousness study does reveal those things, and they're blocks to a happy and happier life. So I think these things are extremely important to find. There are all sorts of loops and convolutions energetically in us. We're contradicting ourselves all over the place, down particularly in that emotional body. We have to find those things. We want to resolve and transcend the things that aren't working for us. And we want to go forward with the things that are. Two minds are always at play. You have either one of them available at any moment in time. You listen to a show like this because you know all this is in you. But where is it? How does it work? What's the energy all about? Who is God? Who am I relative to God? Is there a God? And what the heck is my potential? Those questions are there, and they have to do fundamentally with what mind you're in. That's where the answers lie. That's why you're contradicted, because here, in the ego child's mind, we think God's there for us in the good times and not there for us in the bad times. In the highest mind, we say God is there all the time, used or unused by us, and in high and low degrees. And I create by believing what I believe. And I've got to clean my thinking, feeling, and being act up so I can be in the full momentum of love. Well, we all need to find out these things. And they live beyond our anxieties that the ego child's mind really does indulge in. I'm looking at the time, guys. Anxiety is a wall that comes down to block you from the fantastic options and opportunities that are available in the highest self. That's where God is, by the way, beyond the blocks. And blocks can be worked through even if you don't think so. Suspend your disbelief. I think that sometimes my lectures confuse people. It's so interesting. I have lots of people writing in and they'll say, well, I didn't understand that, but a year later I went back and listened to it and I understand it now. And that pleases me very much because there are levels of the clarity of mind if you continue to work on yourself. But the mind, the large mind with the big M, must be open. And I don't think any of us, when we start this journey, even realize how closed our minds are until we're confronted in consciousness work. And we start working on ourselves to reveal these things so we don't have to have a closed mind anymore, so we can be open. I say it's important to say yes to all possibilities. That doesn't mean being stupid, because one of the things that's in this grand energy of God is discernment. You see? I pulled two quotes for you. The second one is my very favorite, but I think these quotes are lovely. E.B. White is a writer, contributing editor to the New Yorker. I followed what he has written for many years, and he said, "The world is full of people who have never since childhood met an open doorway with an open mind." I like that. I think you're listening to the show not to be one of those people. My favorite quote is from Emily Dickinson. So here it is. I even have a bracelet with this on it. That's how much I love this quote. Not knowing when the dawn will come, I open every door. Not knowing when the dawn will come, I open every door. Isn't that beautiful? Ladies and gentlemen, the dawn is coming, whether you believe in it or not. Open the door. Expect wonderful things. Open your minds, open your hearts, do some work on yourselves. Life is waiting. Don't wait too long, okay? I am so pleased that you listen. I am thrilled to work with you. We're partners in this, so thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do a quick prayer. Oh, thank you. All of you, thank you very much. Okay, wait, there's something, I didn't get this. Let me see if I can read this. Okay. Michelle says, okay, it's usually people I hear say that, but then they are always stuck in what it was okay, I'm trying, oh, thank you, dear, too. Yeah, they don't deal with it and they become the victim of their own circumstances. Yes, absolutely. Michelle, thank you so much for saying that. And Kat, thank you for writing in. I appreciate it. You know, I just adore every one of you. I feel like we all friends. We are, aren't we? Um, it's a different world to be friends in this wonderful energy. Um, I appreciate everything. Let's do a prayer, okay? And then I hope you will take some of this marvelous stuff out into the week. I want you to be aware of your two minds, okay? And what you're motivated by. You're well on the way to releasing those ego child's mind thoughts if you can be aware of that. God, thank you so much for our being together like this. Thank you so much. We are in such gratitude about all this, about the change and growth and opportunities right here, even though we're anxious about it, but we're anxious about remaining where we are too. We're just using it as an excuse to not move. And now we really surrender this excuse to you and say, we will move. We will be in cooperation with our growth and hence our opportunity. Thank you so much for all of this. As we open now to what you would have us do as the next step. We now surrender all issues and blocks, needs to hold on to these things, vestiges and related issues, identities over identities, sympathies over sympathies, definitions of self, and roles we've played that no longer serve us. We surrender these things, not to some vague God out there, but the one that we are, because we are surrendering to our highest selves, that these energies may be transmuted and changed within us to something much more loving and nurturing and enhancing, life enhancing than they've been. It is the threshold we cross from the ego child's mind to the highest self. Everything changes. And just as the old issues that motivated us in the ego child's mind are there for a reason. They're for a reason so they can change into something wonderful as we grow in you. Thank you so much, dear God. We make all these things possible by our cooperation now. And we say this in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to this show today. We are so grateful, and so it is. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have enjoyed this show, will you please get it around on social media? It would mean the world. That's something you can do for us. We're trying to certainly expand our platform always and have the people that want the show to have it. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, on Blog Talk Radio, you can send it to your social media page. But if you just tell people about it, whether you're on social media or not, I appreciate it very much. If you'll like us and follow us and share us, it would mean the world. Visit my website too. You first of all can write me through that website. Any questions or comments that you have, always interested in that. And if you have any suggestions for future shows, I'm listening. And we can certainly talk about that. My website is marthanovak, Novak.com. And there are all sorts of offerings on that. And by all means, get on there and nose around and see if there's anything there for you. And you all, thank you so much for a wonderful day. Thank you, Michelle, for writing in with that wonderful comment that just explained everything. That in a nutshell. Appreciate it. All right, guys. See you next week. Okay? Bye bye.